Hello and welcome. My name is Marshall Clement, and I am the director of the Council of State Governments Justice Center. Every single day across this country, an average of 1,300 people leave state prisons and face the challenges of reentering their community. They must find work, a place to sleep, a way to rebuild relationships, and avoid the substances, situations, and behaviors that led to their incarceration. The stigma, the formal barriers, and the logistical and bureaucratic hurdles are daunting. For those released nearly 20 years ago, 35% would be back in state prison within 3 years. But today, only 27% will return to prison. This progress in reducing recidivism has been hard earned. Since 2008, the efforts of federal, state, and local governments, the work of a growing number of community nonprofits, behavioral health providers, educators, and employers have been helping to reduce the challenge of reentry and make the prospect of a second chance more possible. This work has been successful for three reasons: strong bipartisan support at the federal level, the rise of data and better evidence about what is and isn't working to support second chances, and because of innovative and bold leadership at the state and local level, both inside and outside of government. Today, we are in a moment that feels more partisan than ever, with more changing day by day, when data can seem muddy, and when the challenges facing states are many. This is why we want to be clear about the future of reentry. We want to take a big picture view by asking three questions. What is the state of federal support? What does the most recent data tell us? And how are state leaders building on this progress? Today, we are excited to release two new sets of data for the field and two ways you can take action to help shape the future of reentry. So thank you for joining us for this discussion. Let's dive in by turning to the first question. What is the state of federal support for reentry? To start us off, I am thankful that Representative Carol Miller of West Virginia and Representative Danny Davis from Illinois can join us to share their perspectives from the federal level on the importance of reentry in this moment. Together, they have recently introduced the Second Chance Reauthorization Bill in the 119th Congress. Due to their schedules, these remarks were previously recorded. We'll start with Representative Miller.
Through the years, I've learned the kids for having me today. I'm a grandmother, a mother, a farmer, and a businesswoman. I didn't run for office until after I had raised my children. I love people and I want to see them succeed. Through the years, I've learned that kids and people make mistakes. People can make bad choices. Whether it's in the classroom or in life, people can choose many different paths, and some stumble along the road. As we have seen in West Virginia, people can easily stumble on their path into substance use and addiction. In West Virginia, we all know someone or are related to someone who have been impacted by addiction. It has devastated our communities. I believe people should be allowed to have a second chance. Second chances give people the opportunity to change, to make amends, and to become contributing members of the community. It's a process to find your inner soul or your inner being. In West Virginia, we know how important it is to provide everyone with opportunities to succeed. 95% of incarcerated individuals will return home one day. It is important to make sure that they are prepared to come home. Without strong support and opportunities, too many people can end up right back where they started. That's why the Second Chance Act matters. It provides job training, transitional housing, behavioral health care, and substance use disorder treatment to help with that transition. Whether it is being released from prison or fighting substance use, it takes a lot of strength to change and to say, I don't want to be doing this anymore. Many people coming out of prison want to succeed, and they have special skills to offer. As an active volunteer in the school system for so many years, I saw that every child's interests and skills were unique and special to them. Providing job training and employment opportunities through the Second Chance Act helps people become successful and to use their skills for good in their community. We have seen the results of the Second Chance Act nationwide. Since its bipartisan passage in 2008, the Second Chance Act has helped reduce national recidivism rates by 23%. Here in West Virginia, we've seen these benefits firsthand. Second Chance Act funding has supported programs like Recovery Point's trauma-informed case management and Huntington's Turnaround Initiative, which connects individuals with housing, peer support, and treatment services. These aren't just statistics. They are safer neighborhoods, stronger families, and lives reclaimed from the cycle of addiction, incarceration, or instability. This is about redemption, responsibility, and results. I thank each of you for your work in this field, and I appreciate your support as we extend and strengthen Congress's work to reduce recidivism and improve reentry. I also want to give a special thanks to Marshall Clements and the Council of State Governments for your work to support state and local leaders' advanced reentry efforts. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Representative Danny Davis, and I want to thank the Council of State Governments Justice Center for hosting this event and for your work to improve reentry and to support the Second Chance Act nationwide. In America, we incarcerate more people than any other country in the world. We have more of our people locked up, both in numbers and in percentages of the population. 16 years ago, I authored the Second Chance Act with then Representative Rob Portman because I believe deeply in the power of redemption, the sacred idea that none of us are beyond grace, and the idea of hope. I believe that when someone has paid their debt to society, they deserve more than a bus ticket home. They deserve support and an opportunity, and they deserve a fair shot at building a new and better life. Since the passage of the Second Chance Act in 2008, we have seen that belief turn into real, measurable impact. Across the nation, more than 442,000 individuals have received critical reentry services through this legislation, and the results speak for themselves. Since 2008, recidivism has dropped by 23% nationwide. In Illinois alone, recidivism has fallen by 22%. These numbers represent fathers reuniting with their children, mothers getting back to work, and young people finding hope in opportunity instead of a sale. When we do reentry right, we reduce crime, save taxpayer dollars, grow our economy, and build stronger, more stable communities. In Chicago, the Safer Foundation serves more than 5,300 individuals every year, helping people build careers in high demand industries and partnering with over 300 employers to create meaningful employment opportunities. The New Age Services Corporation supports Black men returning to Cook County with mental health and substance use recovery services that begin before release and continue when they're back in the community. And SGA Youth and Family Services is changing the trajectory for justice-involved youth in Northern Illinois through trauma-informed care, case management, and career readiness support. These programs work because they meet people where they are and give them the resources they need to become a productive part of the community and an asset to society. They treat people with dignity. They are rooted in evidence, and they are focused on outcomes. They embody what the Second Chance Act was designed to do: reduce recidivism, restore families, and help returning citizens rewrite their futures. So I am proud to reintroduce the Second Chance Act with Representative Carol Miller and Senators Shelley Moore Capita and Senator Cory Booker. We're making progress, but I try to never get to the basement and act like I'm in the penthouse. Chicago change is not easy to bring about. And yet we have to continue to experience serious progress. And we are, in fact, doing it, not politically, but on both sides of the aisle, both Democrats and Republicans alike. We see that program development and skill training does work. At the end of the day, this bill is about investing in people. It is about recognizing that reentry is not a privilege, but a right, one that must be supported with resources, compassion, and commitment. It is about ensuring that our communities have what they need to help people succeed, not recycle them back to a system that costs too much and heals too little. So I thank you for the work that you do each and every day. We've come some ways, but we still have a ways to go. And with all of us working cooperatively, I am certain that we'll get there. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
We are so grateful to Representatives Miller and Davis, as well as to Senators Shelley Moore Capito and Cory Booker for championing the Second Chance Reauthorization Bill this year. Their leadership has helped to ensure the Second Chance Act maintains wide bipartisan support. In the Senate, 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats have co-sponsored the bill, and in the House, there are 26 representatives who have co-sponsored the reauthorization bill. We've also seen wide bipartisan support for funding the Second Chance Act, including a group of 88 bipartisan members of Congress who signed a Dear Colleague letter requesting funding for a Second Chance Act programs. That effort has yielded results, with the Senate recommending $116 million for Second Chance, and the House including $106 million in funding for Second Chance programs in the fiscal year 26 bill released last week. You can help support these federal efforts by joining 321 other organizations who have signed a letter to Congress expressing support of the Second Chance Reauthorization Bill using the QR code here. While this federal framework and resources are crucial, those funds are helping drive real innovation at the state level, where data is driving policy decisions and real progress is being measured. So let's turn to the second question. What does the data tell us about the state of reentry? Our last 50 state look at recidivism found a 23% decline in 3-year reincarceration rates since 2008. And while not universal, the decrease was widespread, with 3/4 of states reporting a drop and 9 states reporting a double-digit drop in recidivism rates. But today we are releasing a new look at the most recently available data on reentry outcomes across states. Thanks to Arnold Ventures, we have asked states how many people on supervision are being incarcerated due to a new crime or a technical violation. This metric is distinct from traditional recidivism measures, but it can give us a more real-time view on reentry trends. You can access the full analysis at the QR code here, the next slide. But I want to quickly share 3 big takeaways that can help us think about the future of reentry. First, the report reminds us that reentry outcomes have a big impact on prison admissions and population. 40% of all people coming into prison are people with a supervision violation. That's a huge driver of the flow of people into prison, but it is down from 45% in 2018. Next slide. At any given time, 1 in 5 people, 20% of those incarcerated in state prisons, are there because of a supervision violation. And it's worth noting that probation violations drive just as much of the admissions and population here as parole or post-release supervision. The second big takeaway is that since the pandemic, the number of people sent to prison from supervision for committing a new crime has stayed low. From what we can assess, this is likely good news all around. However, the number of people sent to prison for technical violations has started to climb back up. And these technical violations, whether for missing appointments or testing positive for drugs or violating other conditions, are costly to sanction with incarceration. Our research estimates that states spent $3 billion on these violations in 2023. We know from our work with state leaders that well-targeted reentry strategies can reduce these types of violations and the resulting incarceration. For example, in Missouri, they've seen technical violations drop as a result of their efforts by 45% since 2018. The third takeaway is that states are seeing diverging trends when it comes to these more real-time reentry metrics. Since 2018, next slide, only 2 states have seen sharp increases in prison admissions due to violations. In 7 states, admissions have dipped and then are already back up to their 2018 baseline. For half of states, the majority, admissions from violations are still below pre-pandemic levels, but are climbing back up. And in 14 states, prison admissions from supervision have remained low. As of 2023, they are still 30 to 62% below their levels in 2018. So having access to this data is critical to empower you and leaders in your state to tell the unique story about how improving your reentry efforts can impact these trends, as well as prison budgets and staffing that result. For example, the next slide, in the report we're releasing today, take a look at these 2 states, Texas and Utah. In Texas, overall admissions to prison from all sources are climbing back to 2019 levels. But notice that admissions from supervision are remaining low. That means less supervision failures in Texas are helping to mitigate pressure on the overall prison system. In Utah, however, you can see that supervision violations account for a much higher share of all admissions, and that technical violations are up 20%, while new crimes by those on supervision continue to go down. That creates an opportunity for Utah to think about what other ways technical violations can be handled safely and at less cost, like we see in other states. So to recap, supervision violation trends, an alternative way to look at reentry failures than recidivism, they're a big driver of overall prison admissions. Technical violations are starting to rise, which creates an opportunity for reentry programs to help mitigate and reduce pressure on state prisons at a time when budgets and staffing are in short supply in most places. State trends do vary widely, though, so head to our report to get your state's specific data for the last 6 years to to better fuel your analysis and approach. All that said, recidivism violations are just one set of metrics. Next slide. We have long encouraged states to take a broader look at how we measure successful reintegration. And just last month, we released a new guide suggesting metrics beyond recidivism that look at employment, housing, health, and well-being. You can download that report from our website or at the QR code here. Okay, enough data. Now let's turn to how states are taking the lead in addressing these challenges statewide in Missouri and North Carolina. I'm thrilled to welcome Assistant Division Director Lori Lewis Kennedy from Missouri and Secretary Leslie Dismukes from North Carolina. Lori, it's all right, I'm going to turn to you first. Missouri was the first state to adopt bold reentry goals for the state to achieve by the year 2030. I'm hoping you'll share some of these goals, and I'm eager to hear what's unique and new about how you and your colleagues are working to achieve these than some of the reentry efforts in the past. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Are you all hearing me okay? Awesome. So yes, so in the state of Missouri, I'm so proud of the work that we're doing, obviously. Reentry 2030 has been huge for us. We were the first state to sign on to Reentry 2030, so very excited about that. We really, really focus a lot in the state of Missouri on employment. We believe that employment, and we don't just believe it, evidence shows that when we have residents who are released from incarceration and they are able to obtain gainful employment and maintain that employment, that their risk of recidivism decreases tremendously. And so that is why we are super focused on employment as well as the wraparound services. With employment, we have decided that to set some very, very bold goals. And so our Reentry 2030 goals are that 100% of our residents who are incarcerated that need employment services will receive those services. We also have set a lofty goal that 85% of our folks releasing from prison will gain employment within 30 days of release, and then have maintained employment, 80% of them at 9 months from release, post-release. And so those are huge goals for us. We really enjoy cabinet level support, which is wonderful. We've got a lot of decision makers that we are able to really talk with and to support us in all of our efforts, as well as, literally bring human resources into our institutions to provide those services. And so really kind of want to touch on the fact that we look at a lot of really evidence-based, systematic ways that we can work with our folks before they get released and then post-release. And so from a human resources standpoint, I kind of want to just quickly share with you all that we have 6 state departments that actively send their staffing, so they're not Department of Corrections staff, but we have partnerships with them, and they send staff into our institutions to provide services. And we would not be able to provide those services, maybe at all, but certainly not at the level that we're able to provide services. And so just a few sort of stats. We have reentry centers in all 21 of our institutions, 19 prisons, and 2 transition centers. And so we have experienced, now that they're all up and running, we've experienced a 103% increase year over year in residents utilizing our services, as well as we have helped support our residents in receiving 14,000 source documents in the last fiscal year. So think their source documents, birth certificates, social security cards, non-driver IDs. So just really setting that foundation for what our folks are going to need when they're released. And so it's been huge for us. Technology resources are really, really enormously important. Software sharing, use of AI, use of virtual reality, data sharing across agencies have really helped us to be able to sort of track progress and know that what we're doing, at least right now from from our standpoint, we're seeing a difference, but will allow us across time to really see whether what we are doing in the state of Missouri is actually resulting in what we want to see. And so our reentry centers are essentially job centers all across the state of Missouri. And we have workforce development staff that come in and help us work those job centers. We really have set a diagnostic initiative in that we believe that the minute someone walks into incarceration, we need to start talking to them immediately about this is not where you want to stay. This is not where we need you to stay. How are we going to set about a reentry plan for you the second that you walk into the door? And so our average prison sentence is 2.8 years, which I think was very, very surprising when I first saw that statistic, but that is not a long time. So essentially, a lot of our folks coming into incarceration, about the time that they enter, sometimes they don't even see the parole board. They just get a date for release. And so we want to make sure that we're engaging them in reentry services from the very beginning. Even those that have longer sentences, we want them to begin incarceration with the end in mind, which is for 96% of our folks release. For the other 4%, we need them to see that incarceration, it can be more than just that. And we need them to be a resource in the institution and that they are a part of the community. And so in speaking about second chance employment, I kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit. We have developed a second chance portal that we are really working on marketing and trying to get the utilization up, but we also really focus with our staff on making those communications out to the community very intentionally. And so we hold a workforce development for second chance employers yearly in the spring. And we really work hard so that our employers here in the state of Missouri understand about second chance employment, know that there are resources to support them if they become second chance employers, and that we are here for them as they need. And so that is one of our big sort of, initiatives that we believe will help us remain successful, but become even more successful as we move along.
Thanks so much, Lori. That's just incredible. I mean, just such a shift in how we talk about reentry and the kinds of rollout of services. It wasn't that long ago when we were piloting efforts, when we were just starting to roll out efforts in certain facilities. But you're talking about having reentry centers in all 21 of your facilities. It's a huge, huge accomplishment, and obviously key to accomplish the kinds of goals you're talking about for employment, of reaching 100% of those that are eligible. Can you talk just a bit about how useful, how did you use the Reentry 2030 launch and the goals to both scale up and also to secure support from other state agencies to make some of that integration of services from outside of the Department of Corrections that you're talking about happen?
So I do think that the support from the cabinet level was huge. The support of our governors and the cabinet level, but as well, we have just some people in leadership positions that really, they took very personally along with us Reentry 2030 and really bought into the meaning of that. Our folks are so much more valuable to our communities outside the institutions. And so we really feel like we hold a quarterly meeting. We have all of our representatives from the state agencies come in. We brainstorm, we share ideas, we strengthen connections that are already there. We build new connections where we can. I think it's important that the representatives from those teams are in the same room together regularly. And so we work on updating our statewide plan each fiscal year. And so that's been very valuable. I've been in this role just since February, but I've done a lot of reentry and education work in the department in the past. But having come into this role, we met individually with each state agency so that we could build those personal relationships, because I really want to impress about the importance of personal relationships. It's one thing to have this Reentry 2030 umbrella. And, you know, I think that is a call to action for all of us and gives us sort of shared goals. But really, where it really gets into success with reentry, it is those personal relationships and how we can work together.
Thank you, Lori. Wonderful. Appreciate hearing about the amazing success and efforts in Missouri. I will turn now to North Carolina. We're excited to have the Department of Adult Corrections Secretary Leslie Dismukes with us. Secretary, the level of planning and tracking of reentry strategies across government in North Carolina is incredibly impressive. I know we're going to share some links to some of the reports and strategic plans and progress reports that your agency has put out. But can you share what your state is doing and how it differs from past efforts and a sense of the scope of your Reentry 2030 efforts?
Sure. So just a little bit of context, and thank you for having me, by the way. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with everyone today. For context, our agency, we have 55 institutions and roughly 32,000 people incarcerated. So that's kind of the audience for our reentry efforts, right? And thinking about who we are trying to reach here. And I have been in this position since January and have been lucky enough to inherit an amazing team of reentry specialists. So this work started back in January of 2024. Well, we started in North Carolina before then, but the new efforts that we are have underway right now started in earnest in January of 2024 with Executive Order 303. Then Governor Cooper gave an executive order that prioritized reentry in a number of ways, but really in a whole of government approach, and allowed us to stand up our Joint Reentry Council that mandated the involvement of all cabinet agencies. Now, they didn't really have to mandate it. Of course, everyone wanted to get involved in the effort, but I think that it was very good to have an order from the highest levels of government saying this is a priority, and it is a priority that everyone get involved in these efforts. And so that started us off and started us down the pathway of working with you guys in trying to synergize our efforts and kind of streamline the way that we were going. So everybody believed that reentry was a priority, right? So certainly it is a universal priority for safer communities that we have good reentry programming. And I think it is, as Representative Davis mentioned, it is in fact a bipartisan issue. But I think the how we get there and the pathway is something that we have really worked on over the past year. And I know that you're going to share some of our reports, but creating that framework in North Carolina through our Joint Reentry Council and really taking that on as an agency here at DAC has allowed us to steer the ship, so to speak, and help bring partners to the table to help move our efforts forward here in North Carolina. So some of the things that we have tried to do are really focusing on what are the barriers and how can we bring in all of our fellow cabinet agencies to help us reduce those barriers. So two of the main areas of progress we've made over the past year are working on our identification project and also on some transitional housing. We've been partnering with CSG on a transitional housing assessment, which has been critical. I think that is one of our greatest needs and one of the biggest barriers to our successful reentry here. Our identification project, we have worked with our Department of Motor Vehicles to make sure that every person who is incarcerated has an identification, and then have been running a series of driver's license restoration clinics in North Carolina, as I'm sure in most states. A lot of people who are incarcerated end up building fines and fees and missing court appearances that then cause their driver's licenses to become revoked during their terms of incarceration. So partnering with our law schools here in North Carolina to help work through some of those issues during the term of incarceration so that upon release, everyone can have driver's licenses and move forward in trying to use those driver's licenses to secure the other things that they are needed to do. I think that in taking over this position, Governor Cooper started a whole of government approach, and Governor Stein has not only supported that approach, but has reinvigorated it. I would say we're not letting our foot off the gas, and that has been something that has been great in this transition to a new administration. We are working still through our Joint Reentry Council and have had our cabinet agencies re-up their involvement and add additional people to that Joint Reentry Council so that we can partner with them on our different initiatives, bringing new ideas to the table. We also were lucky enough to be able to appoint the First Lady to our Joint Reentry Council. So I think that nothing speaks louder that this is a priority for our governor and his administration than appointing the First Lady to our Joint Reentry Council to work with us on these initiatives. So certainly shining her light has been very helpful in moving some of our initiatives forward in North Carolina. I also note that we have involved all of our cabinet kind of at the levels, not just those that come to the Joint Reentry Council, but we're hosting in August a reentry simulation for all of our cabinet agencies. So the cabinet secretaries, their highest leadership, we're going to do a reentry simulation for them so that they can really feel and understand what the barriers are and can understand their role potentially and how we help get past some of those barriers. So I think that hands-on learning for our highest levels of government and our cabinet secretaries to help them really put it in perspective and think about how they can get involved and start to help work with us on some of these issues. We've worked closely with our Department of Commerce on our workforce development partnerships. They have given us some grant funding that we have also contributed to at DAC. So we now have 31 local reentry councils. So we're in 31 different communities looking at partnerships and how we can pair those with individuals upon release to make sure that everyone has the support services that they need, and even work back even earlier to time during incarceration and pairing them with services from the different communities to which they will be returning. We have worked really hard to increase our workforce development, thinking about how can we maximize our work release program, make sure that folks who are eligible for work release get to the institutions where we have the greatest need in work release in those communities, and then finding work release jobs in our communities that are going to allow the folks in our custody to gain skills and knowledge that will be translatable upon release, and that they can really get some hands-on experience during their time in custody. And that also includes our apprenticeship programs. Apprenticeship is a huge priority for Governor Stein, and we have tried to incorporate that on our servicing of our population that's currently in custody, in addition to the general public, to make sure that we're building those skills and the opportunities to develop skills in different areas. And that also works through our corrections enterprises plants and how we have tried to target different areas that are relevant to today, not just traditional prison industry areas. We still have those, of course, laundry and sewing, but looking at things like tablet repair and microwave repair. So skills that are developing and then able to be used pretty widely once someone is released from custody. We've also worked really closely with DHHS to make sure that we are maximizing our Medicaid enrollment before release from custody. And during that process, we have gotten them to give us access to our NC Tracks program, which is what is our Medicaid provider portal, so that we can make sure that we as an agency are tracking that enrollment and are making sure that we reach folks to make sure that they're enrolled in Medicaid before they are released. And to that end, I think our agency, really the next phase and the next step of all of the priorities in our Joint Reentry Council strategic plan, will be working these things backwards. So we all know reentry begins on day one, but working these things backwards in our facilities so that we are starting them earlier, enrolling people earlier, getting services earlier so that people are better prepared upon release. Our average time of incarceration is a little bit longer. It's about 17 years. And so I do think that that is a little bit longer runway for some of the folks in our custody, but we want to make sure that we're reaching everybody. We've designated our facilities, certain facilities, as reentry facilities, where we are making a concerted effort to have trained reentry staff at those facilities. We have 21 so far, but my goal by the end of this administration is to have all 55 prisons as reentry facilities, and so that we are given the same level of programming to every person in our custody, no matter what facility they're being housed in. So we're working pretty hard to accomplish that. I'd also say that we're working really hard on the probation side, which is just as important as institutions in terms of trying to decrease the incarcerations for technical violations. We're really working on alternatives there and alternative programming to deal with technical violations, and working with our community partners through probation to help develop some of those services upon release and have a warmer handoff from the people who are coming out of custody to our probation and parole staff, who will be helping guide them through the next phase of their transition. So that's just a couple of things that I think that we are working on that I'm pretty proud of. Our team is amazing, and I think that we are full of energy for this project and are still moving forward, probably going to get a lot done between now and our next strategic plan update. So very excited about that.
Thank you, Secretary Dismuke. It's incredible progress in North Carolina, and it's so exciting to hear about how you coming in as a new leader in Department of Adult Corrections and new governor and new cabinet leadership across the state. And this work and these long-term goals are really being lifted up and energized and pushed forward. And again, if you haven't checked out North Carolina's, the links are in the chat. The degree to which you are detailing how you're going to accomplish these strategies and goals and the progress made against them is just a degree of clarity and transparency in a strategy for reentry that we just have not seen in a lot of states in some time. And so just huge kudos to you and the team. I guess one question, just any advice for other leaders or folks championing reentry in their states who have had a change in administration in their state and or are going to see one coming. How do you keep the energy? How do you build those kinds of partnerships anew with new cabinet level leaders?
Sure. I think that it is getting it in the forefront of people's minds, right? So each cabinet agency might think, well, my lane is commerce, or my lane is health and human services, or my lane is cultural resources. But the reality is that everyone has a part to play. And so I try to mention our reentry efforts at cabinet as often as possible and make sure that we are inviting other cabinet agencies to all of our events. I think one way that's really going to open people's eyes is through the participation in our reentry simulation by the cabinet secretaries and their senior command staff to help them understand what roles they could have. I've tried to meet individually with each cabinet secretary. This is a priority of the governor, and obviously we are charged with it as an agency, but they all have seats on our Joint Reentry Council. So trying to meet with my counterparts to not only let them know about the efforts that we have underway, but also say, here are the specific ways that I think that your agency can partner with us on some of these initiatives. They're very tangible things. They're very achievable things. And it gives us a place to start and putting people together to kind of move the ball forward inch by inch. And then pretty soon we're rolling downhill and getting towards on our goals.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Secretary Smukes, for that. And along with Lori, these examples from Missouri and North Carolina, I think, really demonstrate what's possible when states take the lead. We talked about the federal support, which can help spur and fund parts of it, but the real work, the real dollars, the real energy has to come from state leaders, and you two are both demonstrating that in Missouri and North Carolina. So I want to turn now to talk a little bit just quickly about how your state can join this Reentry 2030 effort. So I'm going to turn it over to Jesse Kelly from the CSG Justice Center, who leads our partnerships with states who are engaged in Reentry 2030 to help them both design and deliver on these kinds of bold reentry goals and strategies that you just heard about from Missouri and North Carolina. Jesse?
Thank you, Marshall. Reentry 2030 is a national initiative focused on dramatically improving outcomes for people leaving prison by the end of this decade. The vision is simple but powerful. Every person leaving incarceration should have access to support, resources, and the opportunity they need to succeed. While departments of corrections are critical and central to the mission, real change does require a whole of government approach. That means aligning leaders from human services, workforce, education, housing, behavioral health, and the community. In many states, that's taken the form of new work groups or task forces meeting regularly to track and sustain progress. Reentry 2030 helps define bold, measurable reentry goals grounded in what's already working and what's possible. We begin with listening because early conversations help us understand a state's context and priorities. From there, we support goal setting conversations, develop action plans, and offer ongoing strategy and technical assistance to really bring those goals to life. Notably, Reentry 2030 is grounded in four core principles. It's human-centered, coordinated across all levels of government, transparent with public goals and definable metrics, and data-driven to improve reentry outcomes. Reentry 2030 is a national movement fueled by local leadership. Since launching in 2022, Reentry 2030 has partnered with 7 states, and you've heard some of the ongoing work in Missouri and North Carolina, and here are a few additional examples of what the other states are doing. Alabama's Reentry Commission recently released a report outlining key strategies to improve ID access, employment, housing, and substance use treatment. A multi-agency task force is now moving forward with implementation efforts aimed at cutting the recidivism rate in Alabama in half by 2030. Nebraska hosted its inaugural Pathways to Purpose Reentry Summit in Omaha, convening over 160 correctional leaders, workforce partners, employers, national experts, and community organizations to advance its Reentry 2030 goals, and specifically to discuss workforce development. For more information on the work in Arizona and Washington and New York, check out reentry2030.org. And please reach out to start that conversation about Reentry 2030 for your state. If you're looking for other ways to work with the Justice Center, you can support our federal efforts that Marshall mentioned by signing on to the letter from the QR code that was displayed earlier. And more broadly, the team at CSG Justice Center can help develop strategies relating to reentry and juvenile justice, discuss how behavioral health and the justice system work together, and use data to improve justice systems and reduce crime. Please feel free to reach out to us so we can help build an option that works best for you in your state. Back to you, Marshall.
Thank you, Jesse. So thank you all for joining us in this discussion. Hopefully it gives you a sense of the federal support and the level and degree of support at the federal level. The latest data that we have on reentry metrics in terms of supervision violations leading to incarceration, and some of the really exciting statewide, bold strategies that we're seeing move this work forward. We also want to thank you for submitting so many excellent questions prior to and during the briefing. Given limitations of the number of participants we had, we asked speakers to address as many as we could in their remarks ahead of time, and we're also working to address and answer other questions that were submitted, and we'll follow up with answers and resources shortly. In closing, I wanted to share links to the two data-filled reports we're releasing today. First, that supervision violations and their impact on incarceration report. And second, 50 different individualized snapshots of a wide range of data on trends shaping your state's criminal justice system. This data that we've released in print form or PDF form before, but now it's online and accessible with updated data sources throughout. I also want to remind you of two ways you can help shape the future of reentry. First, you can demonstrate your organization's support of the Second Chance Reauthorization Act to continue seeing federal dollars support innovative reentry strategies by signing on to that letter in support and that first QR code. And as Jesse mentioned, you can head to reentry2030.org to learn more about how you can work with us to design a bold approach to expanding reentry efforts in your state. The CSG Justice Center is laser focused on advancing justice, public safety, and second chances. And for over 2 decades, we've been at the epicenter of bringing state and local leaders together, building a strong evidence base, and driving policy change. If you're not already signed up for our biweekly justice briefing, please head to csgjusticecenter.org and subscribe to receive the latest news on reentry data, innovations, and resources. And you can follow us on LinkedIn and other social media platforms to stay connected. That concludes our webinar. Thanks so much for joining.